You are all muted, but you can unmute yourself if you like. The host will mute everybody shortly.
I have my own Zoom, Rabbi Weiss. I have my own Zoom at the bottom of the hour, so you'll excuse me if I leave early, please.
What does the bottom of the hour mean? 6:30? I mean, 45 minutes from now?
Yes.
Okay, we should be pretty much done by then.
Okay, good.
It'll give me a reason to try to finish on time. Well, usually we'll finish by the latest 45 minutes.
Okay.
Anyway, but I sent you a chat that you can look at.
I didn't see it yet.
You have to open the chat at the bottom of the,
oh,
you should have a chat there.
Got it. Yeah. There's nothing on the chat screen here.
Oh, 1 second. Okay, then don't worry about it. Then I'll text you later.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Right. Good afternoon. I see you're going to Abu Dhabi.
That's the plan in November.
That should be after you're going on the cruise in October and this in November?
Well, God willing, if these things start. But yeah, if anybody wants information on the trip to Dubai,
yeah,
Joey's actually online. He's the organizer, so he knows a lot more about it than I do.
Okay, because my kids from Teaneck are interested in going.
Okay, you can always send me the info and I'll forward it to Joey.
Oh, okay. I'll be happy to do that. And I'm
Okay.
still looking at the cruise in October.
Okay. Should all get well.
We should all be well. We should at least get the vaccine here.
Yeah, I know. It's we had our shots yesterday, and we are ahead of the curve. And I think you have to give credit to the Prime Minister here for having outbid other nations and paying top dollar in order to receive 10 million doses.
Is that what he did? Is that actually what he did?
That is what he did. Yeah, that's what I'm told.
Well, here in New Jersey, I think we're going to wait till Mashiach comes.
Well, let's hope Mashiach comes soon.
Except he won't be stopping in New Jersey.
He won't be stopping in New Jersey.
It's definitely not on his route. Marshall knows because he has an advanced copy of his route, and it doesn't include.
And I also lived for 4 years in New Jersey, and I know he's not going there.
All right. Okay, I am going to ask our intrepid host, Yossi. He's going to start recording, and he's going to mute everybody so that we can start our shiur. So I know it says live on YouTube, but Yossi, you can start recording whenever you're ready.
That means we are live on YouTube and it gets recorded there automatically. Not to worry.
It's recorded there automatically. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
All right. So welcome to everybody. I want to everybody near and far, I'm glad you're all joining. For those of you who, I'm told that in some places they call this New Year's Eve, but that's just a rumor, because in Israel we don't really know anything about that. But it should be, whether it's the Hebrew year or the secular year, it should be a good year for everybody of health and happiness. I want to say a word of welcome, if they're out there listening, to a new Olim family, Jerry and Bookie Wilds, coming from Lawrence, 5 Towns, New York. So welcome, and you should have a long, happy, successful stay here in Israel without too much aggravation. But if you have any aggravation, remember that the Gemara says Israel is only nikna b'yisurim. You only acquire Israel through sacrifices and tests, trials, and tribulations. Also, a special welcome to Rabbi Howard Wolk, who is tuning in from Dallas, Texas. So a lot of special people here with us tonight. I want to actually dedicate this shiur to Henry Tzvi Yitzchak ben Esther Umar, Zichrono Livracha, and on behalf of the Jabotinsky family, so the neshama should have an aliyah. All right, we have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. Parshat Vayechi. It's the last sedra of the book of Bereshit, and it's very, very appropriate to end on this note. Vayechi, we learned this before in Chayesara, that although it means life and he lived, nevertheless, it really talks about passing from one stage to another. And that's what we're going to center on, this last kind of will and testament of Yaakov, as he, the greatest of the Avot, according to most of Chazal, because he has the greatest amount of text devoted to him. And both he and Yosef are going to die in this Parsha, truly ending an era. And there is a lot to say. As we've said many times before, you have to look at the title of the Sedra if you want an insight into what it's all about. Vayechi, first of all, it says Vayechi Yaakov, he lived in Eretz Mitzrayim. Vayehi Yemei Yaakov Shnei Chayav. Now, that is kind of an idiom that means the years of his life, but you can also translate it as Shnei Chayav, the 2 lives which Yaakov lived. And that is hidden inside the word Vayechi, because Vayechi in Gematria, if you total up those letters, it totals 34, or 17 plus 17. Say Chazal, Yaakov only really lived during these 17-year bookends of his life. The first 17 years when Yosef was together with him and he had his family united. Yosef was 17, obviously, when he was thrown into the pit. And the last 17 years when he was reunited with Yosef in Egypt. So those 34 years, Vayechi, is when he truly lived, when he was together with his entire family. And so just the title alone is spectacular in this idea of family and how important family is and being together. And when family is split up, in a sense, a person is not living a full life. In any case, Yaakov has a lot of tasks to do before he dies. And the pasuk says, and if you're a student of the text, you notice something strange here. First of all, he gathers together with, he's called to Yosef. Now, the Meforshim tell us, because it says that they sent a message, Hinei avicha choleh, to Yosef, your father is sick. So the Medrash says that until Yaakov, no one got sick before they died. They would die very suddenly. They would sneeze and the air would just be taken out of them and they were gone. And Yaakov said, well, he appealed to Hashem in a very strange request. People should get sick before they die so that they know that the end is coming and they can take care of business, tie up loose ends, have closure, as we're going to see spectacularly in this Parsha. And so Yaakov understands that I have a lot to do before I go. One of the first things he does is he says to Yosef, this is not my country. Yes, it's a cushy life in Goshen, and you've set things up, Yosef, very well. We're really enjoying life here with a lot of perks, but it's not our country. And you're going to have to, when I die, take me, I want to be buried in Marat Machpelah. And the phrasing is very strange, because first he says, Asita imadi chesed ve'emet, we know that phrase. Al natik boreinu b'mitzrayim, don't bury me in Egypt. But then listen to the order. V'shachati ima abotai, I shall lay with my ancestors. Unasatani mimitzrayim, take me out of Egypt. Ufartani b'kvuratam, and be buried in the grave where they're buried, Marat Machpelah. But the order here is strange. It should have said first, take me out of Egypt, bury me in the communal kever, and then shachati ima abotai, I will lie with my fathers. It's out of place here. When I look at that, I didn't find any meforshim on it, but to me that just strikes me that that's what's on his mind. He's going to be reunited with his ancestors, and he has to be shalem. He's going to meet them. They're going to ask him questions in Olam Haba. He's got to be prepared to be straight with them and to have his affairs in order, to be able to say that I conducted myself in my life the way that I'm proud of, I should have done. And that, I think, is on his mind. And that's why I think that's the first phrase that's given. So now he has to take care of a number of things. So, and we're not going to talk about all of that, but the most famous ones, he's going to give brachot. Brachot, without getting into, we've talked about this before, the idea of a bracha, it comes from the word berech or brecha, brachot. There's a pool of blessings, and we know that we acknowledge Hashem gives us all of our blessings, and the blessings can be a portent for the future, a stimulus, that's a good word in America today, and a motivation. And the first ones are going to go to his grandchildren, Ephraim and Manasseh. And a lot of discussion about Ephraim and Manasseh and what makes them so special and unique that they get their own special bracha. The other grandchildren don't. So the obvious answer seems to be that Yaakov he's sympathetic to the fact that they grew up without having their extended family around, their uncles, their grandparents. They grew up in Egypt, so they deserve a little extra. Rav Soloveitchik likes to point out that this is the only case we have of the Abot or Imahot speaking to the next generation, to the grandchildren. We don't see that anywhere else. So clearly, there's something special about them. We know that they're singled out, this bracha that we give to our sons, that Hashem should make you like Ephraim and Manasseh from this pasuk, B'cha yivarech Yisrael lemor yisimcha Elokim k'Ephraim v'chi Manasseh. And there's much discussion why exactly they were singled out. And one of the answers is that, again, in tribute to the fact that they grew up in Egypt and they remained true and faithful Jews, that certainly was something special about them. But there's more than that as well. There is this idea that throughout the generations, there is this curse of sibling rivalry that decimates the family between Yishmael and Yitzchak and Yaakov and Esav and the brothers and Yosef, etc., and comes along Ephraim and Manasseh. And although Ephraim the younger gets the better bracha, as we'll talk about in more detail in a moment, this is what we call the sounds of silence. He doesn't say anything, he doesn't protest. And that is an indication that the brothers have finally found a way to get along. This is what Yaakov's been searching for, to weed out or to excise this malady that seems to be going throughout all the generations of pitting one against the other. And therefore, seeing that Ephraim and Manasseh love each other so much that they're not jealous of each other, that they're happy for the other's, good news or blessings or things which they're rewarded with, and they don't protest. That's a beautiful thing. Ephraim and Manasseh, it's interesting that the pasuk says, Yaakov says, Keruven v'Shimon Yuli. These two grandchildren are going to be like Reuven and Shimon to me. Now, why does he say they're going to be like Reuven and Shimon to me? They're not the best of the brothers. He could have said, they're as valuable to me or as dear to me as Yehuda and Levi or others. So one of the interesting ideas of that is that Reuven and Shimon were instrumental in throwing Yosef into the pit. And therefore, in a sense, Ephraim and Manasseh are the tikkun for the act that their uncles did. And this, of course, is deeply on Yaakov's mind. We don't have any evidence. You know, there's a whole discussion, what did Yaakov know? But a lot of Chazal feel Yaakov was pretty smart. He knew something had happened there. And even if he wasn't given all the sordid details, this was something that had to be addressed. I want to, and I know I've said this before, and some of you know this, but it's such a beautiful idea to repeat that there are certain individuals throughout Jewish history that nurture Am Yisrael and guide us and give us really wonderful models to emulate, and to whom we really deserve a great deal. So these individuals are characterized by the letters Aleph and Mem, which means a mother. In other words, the one who nurtures us is our mother. These are, in a sense, the mothers and the mother of all blessings. And we see this throughout history. Adam, the first human, his name begins with an Aleph and ends with a Mem. And then comes Abraham, begins with an Aleph, ends with a Mem. Then comes the pair of Aaron with an Aleph and Moshe with a Mem. Later on, Esther and Mordechai, Aleph and Mem. And then, as we said, we have to add to the mix Ephraim and Manasseh. Again, this idea of breaking the sibling rivalry. And of course, at the end of days, we will have the ultimate aim, the ultimate mother, the Aleph and the Mem of Eliyahu and Moshiach. So this is a pattern that goes through history. And I would add, vis-a-vis, pertinent to our discussion last week about what makes it tzaddik, and what did we say? There were two things that really characterize a person as a tzaddik. One is emunah, and the other is mesirat nefesh, faith and willingness to sacrifice for others. And here too, you have the letters of Aleph and Mem, emunah, Aleph, and mesirat nefesh, Mem. Okay, let's go on a little bit. Yaakov, so this is something Yaakov needs to do to reach out literally to his grandchildren and be able to be confident that this generation to come is going to pick up the ball and going to keep Judaism going, keep the Jewish nation going. Yaakov clearly has a lot on his conscience. First of all, he did not bury Rachel in Marat HaMachpelah, and confronting Yosef, especially since he's asking Yosef to bury me in Marat HaMachpelah, he knows that Yosef must be thinking, well, you didn't bury my mother there. She was buried, as we know, Rachel Baderech, on the way, Efrat, not even in Beit Lechem, and a kind of a almost ignominious place along the road, and not what you would expect for somebody who Yaakov loves so deeply. So Yaakov is very self-conscious about that in front of Yosef. And so Rashi brings this famous medrash that she was buried there in order to ultimately greet the exiles, those who were, in a sense, thrown out of their home and now are coming back to Israel. And she is there to, in a sense, assure them that you will return, and when you do return, I'll be there to greet you. We know this famous Haftarah on Rosh Hashanah, Rachel mevakal baneha, and I think it's even more poignant when Yaakov is intimating this or telling this to Yosef as a justification for burying Rachel there, because in a sense, this was Yosef. He was also thrown out of his home. He also will give directions. I want to go back to Israel too. And so Yaakov is saying, don't hold this against me. Your mother, I loved Rachel, but she has a special role to play in the future. And that is something which you can relate to, because you too were also thrown out of your home, and you too want to go back to Israel to live. Then comes this story of the blessings given to Ephraim and Manasseh. And it's very convoluted. And when we look at it with the whole idea, he puts the right hand on the one who should be on the left and the left on the right. And there's a lot of space given to it. I'll read you a little bit. Vayikach Yosef et shnehem et Ephraim b'mino, mismol Yisrael, vet Menashe b'ismolo b'min Yisrael, because Yosef is thinking the firstborn is Menashe. He's going to get the better bracha because the right hand is the hand of power, is the prominent hand. Vayigash elav, vayishlach Yisrael et yimino, vayashid el rosh Ephraim v'hu atzair. But Yisrael, notice, by the way, it doesn't say Yaakov here. It says Yisrael. This relates to what we said before about the interchangeability of those names, that sometimes we use this Yisrael when we're talking about a far-reaching national cosmic act or individual, as opposed to Yaakov, who is strictly personal. So here, he's moving the hand, that's Smolo al Rosh Menashe, Sikel et Yadav. He does this with wisdom, Ki Menashe B'chor. And then, of course, Yosef is kind of upset about this. Vayar Yosef ki yashit aviv yad yamino rosh Ephraim ve'yara beinav. It's bad in his eyes. Why is he doing this? Vayitmoch yad aviv lasiroto. He tries to force the issue and move his hand so it goes back, right hand on the elder, left hand on the younger. But and he says, Lo chen avi, don't do it. Ki zeh b'chor. Maybe he's thinking Yaakov doesn't know who's the firstborn. Simi min chal roshos. Put your right hand on his head. Vayima'ein aviv. But Yaakov says no. Yadati b'ni yadati. I know full well who's the firstborn, and he'll be great. But hakaton yigdal mimenu v'zaro yeh malo agoyim. But it is Ephraim who's going to be the greater, the younger one. Notice, I think, what's happening here. And remember that this is introduced, and it's not by coincidence that it says, Einei Yisrael kavdu mizoken, that, again, using Yisrael, that Yaakov is somewhat blind. That's maybe why Yosef thinks he put the hands on the wrong heads. But what's happening here, do you see it? It's a replay of one of the most traumatic incidents in Yaakov's life. And that, of course, is the story of the Bechorah, the birthright. This has always plagued Yaakov. He's always had these deep-seated concerns, traumas. Why did I do the right thing? How could I act like that? How could I fool my brother, fool my father, and surreptitiously take the blessing away? And you see what's happening here. Yitzchak was blind, and now Yaakov is blind. And suddenly the children are being exchanged, switched. The older for the younger for the older. And listen to this, we all know, but maybe we don't think about it. But in this blessing, which Yaakov gives to the children, he says, first of all, he says, Hashem will be with you as he was with me. And then this famous phrase, Hamalach hagoel oti mikal ra, the angel that saved me from all evil, Yivarech et hanarim, this angel will bless the children. What's going on here? What does that mean? Doesn't Yaakov want to bless Ephraim and Manasseh himself? Why is he suddenly referring to an angel that's going to do the blessing? After all, later on, he's going to bless all the Shvatim. He doesn't call in any angel to do so. Why suddenly do we inject this idea of the angel? Well, clearly, Yaakov is remembering that it was the angel in the story of the Bechorah that certified, or that gave him this blessing, certifying that he was the rightful heir to the leadership of Am Yisrael. And his name Yisrael would have that connotation that he is the one who is appropriate to lead the nation. And this is, again, all going through Yaakov's mind. So he introduces this idea of an angel, that an angel is coming along because an angel blessed him. So now he's calling upon the angel, give the same blessing to these two boys, even though, as in my case, they are, in a sense, switching places, that the younger is supplanting the older in order to take the leadership. And he insists on this because Yaakov wants to bring home this idea that leadership is a meritocracy and not an aristocracy. You have to earn it. It doesn't come automatically because you're the next in line. And he is setting the stage for what happens throughout Jewish history, as we'll see in many, many cases, such as with David HaMelech, who is certainly not the oldest, he's the youngest of Yishai's children, who will, after him, will promote his, again, not his oldest son, but Shlomo HaMelech. And this is a pattern that follows through Jewish history. You have to earn it. It doesn't automatically come to you. And this is what Yaakov is almost subconsciously saying. What happened in the story with the Bechorah, with Esav, I deserved it. Esav didn't. And therefore, this strange idea of bringing an angel in is in order to give Yaakov this peace of mind that what happened to me so long ago with my brother that's haunted me all these years, I did the right thing. And that's why Sikel et Yadav, just as, Yitzchak put his hands on Yaakov, Yaakov is putting his hands on these boys and saying, I know what I'm doing. And in effect, he's saying, what I did long ago was the right thing. Had Esav, the older, led the nation, it would have been disastrous. And then, as I mentioned in the Parsha sheet, but I'll repeat it here. Some people, if you're not getting it, just send me your email. The Parsha sheet continues every week. It's on email. So he uses this strange idea of, he says to Yosef, that I am giving you Shechem echad alachecha, one Shechem. Now, Shechem can mean shoulder, and Rashi translates it as portion. But we know Shechem is also a very famous or infamous city. And I want to suggest that this is the other trauma that Yaakov is going through since the day that Yosef was taken away from him. What happened to Yosef at the pit. And now, and of course, that took place in Shechem. And so Yaakov is coming back and saying, the trauma you went through that maybe I in some way caused, maybe had I presided over the family dynamics better, the brothers never would have done this to you. Va'aviv shamarat hadavar, it says. His father kind of kept it to himself, but maybe he shouldn't have. And so in Shechem, he was thrown into this pit, and everything else led, although ultimately to glory, but all this terrible suffering by Yosef. And Yaakov is saying, I'm trying to make up for that. So I'm dafka giving you this city of Shechem, where this incident took place. And the brothers will say nothing about it, even though it means Yosef is getting an extra portion, because Yaakov is trying to over and over again emphasize, Yosef, you are every bit the firstborn as Reuven is, in many ways more so, of course. I mean, you're going to get a double portion. You're going to get your portion in the land. You're also going to get Shechem. And Ephraim and Manasseh are going to inherit that double portion. So Keruven and Shimon, they're getting a full share instead of just inheriting your share, to indicate that, in a sense, I want to make amends for what happened to you. And the brothers, of course, are not going to object to this at all. So Yaakov is using this whole experience to, in a sense, and I use the phrase there, to unburden this burden that he's carried on his shoulder for all these years. The things he did in his life that he looks back and wonders, did I do right? I didn't bury Rachel in Merat HaMachpelah for eternity. And indeed, that's why the Chazal say that he cried when he first met Rachel, because he had this vision he would not be buried with her. And, you know, what happened to you when you were kidnapped and sold by your brothers, and what I did to my own brother, he's got to unburden himself of all this guilt if he's going to go peacefully to the next world. And I suggest that this is, all these stories are, and incidents that take place here, it's all in order to prepare Yaakov to make amends before he dies, to clear his conscience and to rid himself of any of that self-guilt. Then he can, v'shachafti im avotai, I can go and I can lay with my ancestors, and I won't have to be ashamed of what I did. And I will be able to face them and stand up, lie down straight, you might say, and to explain exactly why I did what I did. And his last message is really before the blessings. He says, Hey asfu v'hi kaptzu, gather together, unite. And again, this idea of this intra-Jewish rivalry and bitterness and infighting is the cause of all of our problems, and back then and now too. And Yaakov said, you know, I realize this, nothing worse ever happened than what the brothers did to Yosef. We've got to weed that out. We've got to be like Ephraim and Manasseh. We've got to accept each other, even if sometimes they seem to be given more than we are. And that's why he gives Yosef more, and he gives Ephraim and Manasseh more. You know, as we said before, this phrase, mi hashir hasamech b'chelko. It doesn't just mean happy, who is rich, the one who is happy with his portion, but we're really saying samech b'chelko, with the other one's portion. You look across the fence, you see what a beautiful yard, you see the guy next door has the Porsche, the Ferrari, and you're happy that he has it. Samech b'chelko, that you don't bemoan the fact that he has more than you. You're happy for him. And that's the message that I think Yaakov is trying to send here in his final moments before he dies, that we have to unite. We do the things we do in life, and at some point we have to come to grips with that. And that's the amazing lesson here of Parshat Vayechi, that all of us at some point in our lives, we will have to make peace, not only with God, but also with ourselves, even more importantly, perhaps, than with Hashem. We have to be shalem with ourselves. And Yaakov has such a tumultuous life, and all these things happened to him, and so many choices that had to be made. Yaakov, at the end of his days, has to think back on that and has to be able to justify what he did. That's why he justifies himself to Yosef. He justifies himself to the other brothers, to Yosef's brothers. And at the end, he feels, my life has come full circle. My family, I'm back together with my family. And that's where we need to stay, united as one family, either in good times or in bad times. And I think that's the legacy that he wants to leave for eternity. And that's why Vayechi, he lives. We say, Od Avinu Chai, that in a sense, Yaakov did not die. Of course, he died. And we see that he died. He was embalmed. He was buried. We know he died. But the essence of Yaakov, which is do the right thing, be able to say at the end of your life, I conducted myself properly, and promote those values which are eternal. In that sense, Yaakov, Od Avinu Chai, our father Yaakov, did not die. So I wish everyone a good year, a Shabbat Shalom. We'll unmute if anybody wants to comment. I know there were some good messages sent in the chat. And Tal said, Ephraim and Menashe are like his own two firstborn. And in a sense, that's true, because Yaakov really had two firstborn, one from Rachel, one from Leah. Yehuda gets the best blessing from the children of Leah. And Yaakov tries to spread the wealth as much as he possibly can. All right, if you want to unmute yourself, then I think you can. And if anybody has a comment that they want to make, feel free to do so.
Yasher Koach, Rabbi Weiss. Just
thank you, Rabbi Wolk.
Going back to something you said earlier, when it says Vayomer li Yosef hine avicha choleh, they send a message to Yosef, your father is ill. So the Midrash on the pasuk asks the question, how come they had to send a message to Yosef that his father is sick? Didn't Yosef visit him every day? Here they were separated for 20, 21 years. You got to send them a messenger. Your father's ill, and he runs with his two sons. So the Midrash says this is to tell us a special nature of Yosef, that Yosef purposely, at pain to himself, didn't visit his father. And if you examine the psukim starting in last week's Parsha, when they are reunited, Yaakov and Yosef are never alone.
Right.
Because the Midrash says Yosef didn't want Yaakov to ask him the ultimate question. Tell me, how did you end up in Egypt? What happened that day in the field? If his father would ask him, he'd have to tell him the truth. And the whole family turmoil would start once again. So Yosef purposely didn't go to visit Yaakov.
Yeah, thank you for that. It would have been uncomfortable. We talked a little bit about last week about Binyamin, that he also knew what happened. He didn't say anything. We talked about his, his jewel in the breastplate being yashfei, which means yesh peh. He had a mouth, but he didn't use it because it would also destroy the whole family dynamic. So silence really is golden sometimes. The way Yosef conducted himself and the way Binyamin conducted himself. And as we talked earlier, Yitzchak as well was alive when Yosef was taken. And the Medrash says that Yitzchak knew what happened as well, but he didn't speak either. So sometimes, always, time to speak and a time not to. Anyone else want to have any comment?
Rabbi Weiss, can you comment on why they embalmed Yaakov? That's a very un-Jewish thing to do.
Yes, read the Parsha sheet, ask the rabbi this week. It's about the whole story of embalming both Yaakov and Yosef. So I won't get into it now. You should all be getting the Parsha sheet each week. If not, send me your email. I'll send it to you. And this week's Ask the Rabbi is, how could they have been embalmed? Short answer is that they may not have had a choice. But there are other answers to it as well. And if it meant then the same thing that it means now, which it may very well have. But yeah, it's an oft-asked question and very puzzling. And some say they did the wrong thing. Some say that it really wasn't appropriate to them.
Maybe it was CDC guidelines to transport a body in those days.
Well, so.
We can appreciate that now. Thank you, Alan.
Right.
That's Alan Steinberg from the Great Neck.
I read a few years ago in the newspaper, I think it was Makor Rishon, that in the old Yishuv, the rabbis used to encourage people to go to a French college in Jerusalem, some kind of a French institution, which I think is probably still exists. And there was a little museum there, and there was at least one mummy. And the rabbis used to encourage people to go there and have a look at what a mummy was like, because Jacob and Joseph were both mummified.
Hmm. Well, of course, obviously the Egyptians were the experts at this, and but that doesn't, you know, later on, of course, embalming became completely forbidden in Jewish practice.
Yeah.
And hopefully
there were special circumstances.
Yeah, they could be special. So that's indeed one of the answers to that question. Yeah.
I think there is an answer to that, Yaakov would not be, his body would not be deteriorated as being a tzaddik. And Yosef didn't want the Egyptians to worship his father as a god. So he balsamed them like the others to avoid that.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach. Mm-hmm. Very good. All right, so Bezrat Hashem. Yes?
It's Willie.
Yes, Willie.
There are some who say that Judaism started with Mount Sinai, not with Abraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov. That they weren't Jewish. I mean, somebody mentioned that wasn't a very Jewish thing to do.
Yeah, well, you can use that old story that it's before Matan Torah, I suppose, which is always a fallback, even though there's opinions that they kept the Torah in a kind of a instinctive way. But yeah, you can always fall back. I still would say that we revere Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and the Imahot as well. So I would say that we can't exclude them from the picture. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say something about the comment that was made before about some French institution where they had a little museum with a mummy in it. I don't know about any such French place, but the Jerusalem Pontifical Institute, which is across the street on the side from the King David Hotel, just about, they have right in the front, they have a little museum, and they have a couple of mummies and other very, very interesting things in there. Very small museum, but very interesting. So it's, I don't know about the rabbis suggesting it, but I would suggest it.
Okay. All right. Thank you to all. Thank to all you mummies and daddies out there for joining in. And we will, God willing, see you next time as well. Should be with good health, stay safe, and Bezrat Hashem, we are hopefully coming to an end of this pandemic. And we may still continue the Zooms because it's been very special to be able to have people all over the world together and studying together. So Shabbat Shalom to everybody.
Thank you.